August the 19th, 2023. Guys, we're looking at the Atlantic Ocean, and we've got quite a bit going on. I've talked about the high pressure system until we're all sick of it, but that's what we're going to be dealing with. We've got one setting up over the central U.S., and you've got one over the Atlantic. You can almost see where it is now in this area. It's keeping the Saharan dust layer below it right there. Now, we've got this system that's, you can already start to see rotation in the upper level air here that's moving into the Gulf of Mexico. We'll look at the charts. This system here is moving into the Caribbean already. Again, tropical characteristics of the counterclockwise rotation. This system and this system. We've got a new one coming off of Africa they're not talking about yet in the 10 a.m. update. But guys, this one is the one that we're looking at yesterday that was going to move up into the Caribbean. The high pressure was going to ease up in this area and allow it to split. Now, the last models I looked at earlier, and we may have a new one by the time I get there, was showing that the same thing. It's splitting, following possibly this storm along the East Coast. And before it's over with, guys, you may have 3 storms along the East Coast. We'll take a look at it. But this thing was splitting, going in, following the opening in the high pressure, and it had stopped with the second half of it as it split away between the Gulf and the Yucatan. But now it's possible that this system will also pull across South Florida and follow the part that breaks apart here. In other words, the storm breaks in half, part of it moves here, the other part gets caught up in the high pressure, the void left by the lack of high pressure, and pulls in behind it. Now, our first system here has moved into a 50% chance of development. It says that this area of disturbed weather located near the northwestern and central Bahamas is expected to move into the Gulf of Mexico by early next week, where a broad area of low pressure is expected to form. Some slow development of the system is possible thereafter, and a tropical depression could form as it moves westward and approaches the western Gulf of Mexico, the coastline, by the middle of next week. Now, notice this cone is slightly drifted north, guys. South Louisiana, is in the area of development. And I think that, again, is because we're going to see the high pressure vacate this entire area and start pulling a lot of things with it. In other words, this one's coming in the Gulf, but it's going to move slightly more north because of that vacuum created. This storm coming in here is the one that's going to split up. Let's take a look at that. It's got a 40% chance of development. Tropical wave located just east of the Windward Islands is producing disorganized showers and thunderstorms. Some gradual development of the system is possible, and a tropical depression could form during the early and middle parts of next week while it moves westward to west-northwestward at 10 to 15 miles an hour across the Lesser Antilles and over the eastern and central Caribbean Sea. That's this one. Now, this one has a smaller chance of development, 30% chance. It says that though environmental conditions are forecast to become increasingly unfavorable for further development of the system behind it pretty much is going to move up into the Saharan sand layer and get absorbed into that. Now, quickly, before we go to the models for the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic, I do want to point out the new update for you folks in California and along the Baja Peninsula and up through that entire West Coast area. Updated 12:30 p.m. One thing I've noticed is the 2 most accurate models we have is the Navy model and the CMC, especially when storms get close to landfall. We'll see these things start to get very close together and make an X. Right here in this purple line, I know it's hard to see right here. It's hard to see even on my computer, so I know it is hard for you. But this is showing the storm staying off the coast of the Baja Peninsula, maybe barely scraping it there, but not coming through the entire northern part of the Baja, staying offshore and entering into the Los Angeles area. And you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 models that are showing that. Also, the Canadian model is right in there with it. You can barely see it. and the top sign blocks where the names are coming in. But right through here in the center left of this, just like the cone was showing, there the Navy model is still offshore until right in here, right into just north of the Southern California border. So guys in the LA, San Diego area, do not take your eyes off the storm, because if it does not come fully ashore, it's going to be much stronger. And as it comes ashore, you're going to be getting winds coming from the east. It's going to be rotating this way. So as it moves up, you'll be getting the winds coming out of the east. As it gets closer, it'll be coming out of the south in that direction. So just figure all of that in on the windy side of where you're going to be, and the windy side and your piers, boat landings, things like that. And remember that right now along the Baja, you're at low tide, and in the San Diego area also, low tide is now. I just looked at the webcams there. So you need to look at your tidal gauges. Just go in there and put California tide gauges, and it will change all up and down the west coast, But if you're at high tide at this point, when it's reaching into the California border, that's going to create more problems, much more problems, depending on the distance in low tide and high tide in your area. Now, the 11 a.m. advisory has got the storm down to a Cat 3 for you guys. That's good, but you're still at 125 mile per hour sustained winds, moving at 16 miles an hour north and northwest, slightly to the left here. You've got the cone that shows the possible path of the center of circulation. And again, the outside here is following that Navy model. As long as it stays offshore, you know what the difference is. Now, it's showing it being into Southern California in the morning at 8 p.m. Again, it's moving 16 miles an hour with 60 mile per hour winds. It's a tropical storm. That will depend on how long it stays offshore. So you don't have much time right now. We're in midday Saturday, okay? This thing's going to be moving very fast this evening and overnight. By tomorrow evening, it will be here, but you're going to experience the wind, the rains well before that. So all day tomorrow, be looking for it. Again, one of the San Diego webcams I was looking at, maybe Pacific Beach or whatever it was showing very overcast, just situation, gray clouds, gray sky, the whole 9 yards, just like sitting in Florida and watching an approaching storm. Now first, let's take a look at this Canadian model. Notice your timestamp is today, and we'll go through, I think, about the 26th or so. And I'll play this forward. Just you've got the storm here, and here, 3, a new one coming off the African coast, the system moving into the Gulf of Mexico, and the one in the Caribbean that is going to split. Now, again, this is slightly updated since the last one I looked at, so let's check it out together. Play it forward. First coming into the Gulf of Mexico. Now you can see definitely southern Texas. What you're watching is an opening in the high pressure that could close off, but right now you have 3 storms that are going to move up the east coast. 2 are coming from the system in the Caribbean, which is very unusual, but this is unusual times. There's the first split. Here's the second one, slightly further to the west, coming on the east coast. Then one is following that opening. Check that out. So any closure, and this is going to be the important part to watch, any closure of this orange area, say, which is the high pressure, I'll let it play back and I'll show you what I'm talking about. If it closes off after the opening and it moves forward, it's kind of, like I said, creating a vacuum. You can see how open this is into much lower pressures. Let's kind of step it forward now. Now you see it attempting to close back into this section right here, guys. This is on August 24th. So that's 5 days away. If this were to completely relink, and it changes every day we look at it, then this is going to force some of this activity into the northeastern United States. Let's play it forward. It's your first system pushing into that low high pressure area. Then it's trying to reform again. Check this out right there. And we know this is going to change every day, but it's showing it trying to push that back but 2 storms very close to the east coast. Now looking at NavGem, or the Navy model, which was in that purple line, keeping that storm offshore, guys, for you in California a little longer. Here is what we're looking at in the Atlantic. Play it forward. Here's your Caribbean system. Now it shows it stopping here, but again, it's not going as far forward in time. But notice as that one does that, you still got low pressure area right in here. I think we're right in the time to where we're going to see continuous storms coming, because we've waited so far into the hurricane season for it to begin. So there's a lot of energy pent up, and that's what we're going to be paying attention to, guys. We will update this. Also, we'll update the incoming Category 3 Hilary for the West Coast. But guys, pay close attention this weekend, especially in Texas. And again, these are going to change. So Louisiana, anywhere along the northern Gulf, we'll have to watch this. Now, a tropical storm or tropical depression coming in with a lot of rain would be a blessing for a lot of areas. But we're watching it. You watch it. It's a heads up. Be safe.